Good evening, everyone. It's okay. Good evening, everyone. I have to start this thing too. There we go. All right, welcome to the August 26th, 2024 meeting of the Scio Township Planning Commission. And with that, roll call, please.
Roll call the commissioners. Moore.
Present.
Rothney.
Present.
Walsh. Present. Hyde. Present. Riser.
Present.
Culbertson.
Present.
Notice that Commissioner Yeaple is absent.
Absent. All right, and he did let us know that would be. All right, next item is the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Okay,
Or
moved by Commissioner Moore and supported by Commissioner Hyde to adopt the agenda as posted. Discussion. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the agenda is adopted as posted. Communications and correspondence. I just wanted to say that report that I did walk the property with Laura Hill, just to get a sense of what it looked like and where she was thinking about solar, et cetera. Fact finding. Any other correspondence or communications? All right. None. We have no presentations, so we'll move to public comments. So folks that are would like to address the Planning Commission on any matters this evening. We have a public comment now and then one at the end of the meeting. We'll just open it up. I don't think we need a time restriction to this evening. So if there's anyone in attendance who would like to address the Planning Commission, please come forward. I don't think so. Moving to those online. Rob Pattinson. All right. Hi, Rob. No, this does not mean you can go on for 10 minutes.
Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. I can't remember if it was last meeting or the meeting before. You were talking about housing projects in Scio and around Scio. And last week I found out that the Mill Creek project in Dexter, along Dexter Chelsea Road, is going to be for 3 bedrooms and a 3-bathroom condo. It's going to be $1.5 million. And that was an astounding number that I never would have imagined would happen in Dexter. But as we talk about housing projects in and around Scio and affordable housing and attainable housing, I thought that was an important bit of information for the Planning Commission to know.
wow.
Thank you. I looked at those too and saw that pricing.
What are the dimensions again, Rob? Bedroom or
Three
square
bedroom.
footage?
3-bedroom, 3-bathroom. I didn't get a square footage, but it's not big.
That's the pricing that they're getting, you know, in the Carytown area for some of the new condos in Ann Arbor. Yeah. Maybe, but smaller.
But in Dexter, you get parking.
All right, yeah, housing. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
All right, anyone else?
No.
All right. And I'll entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
by
Support.
Commissioner Walsh, supported by Commissioner Riser. Close public comments. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, public comment is closed at 7:04. Moving on, approval of the minutes. This would be our 8/12 meeting. The minutes were posted.
Wasn't there? I figured
That's right.
somebody motioned it.
No issues. Riser. Commissioner Moore. Any issues with the minutes?
No.
I found it very interesting.
Yeah. It wasn't.
That I had no issues with the minutes.
All right, then, we do need a motion.
Move to accept the minutes from this meeting.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Rothney, supported
Support.
by Commissioner Reiser. Any further discussion? Right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Right. You,
Do we accept the minutes or do we approve the minutes?
We approve the minutes.
Thank you. Motion to
That's what she
approve.
said. You just sounded different from over there.
Okay. You know, my hearing's.
I heard her.
is fine.
I was closer. I heard her.
Mhm. All right, then, moving on, we have no public hearings, so we're gonna just move to our, discussion on renewable energy.
So in your packet, you have a memo that kind of explains this last version. Paul Funk with DTE provided comments on the draft. His comments are noted in green in our memo. And then Sarah Mills also provided comments and suggestions. Her comments are in blue. So if you're looking through, you can see where I made changes that were related to Paul's comments. They're in green, or his comments, and then the same for Sarah's, and they're in blue. And we can go through those. Additionally, Jan mentioned that she had walked Miss Kendall's property. And in doing so, we did a map. We generated a map that showed the setbacks as we're currently presenting them on a small parcel, and they don't work. Primarily because this ordinance is meant for commercial scale solar. So we're gonna talk about a couple ways that maybe we can address that for community solar projects tonight. So Jan, do you just want to go through the comments that we received?
Yeah, I think that'd be
page by
great,
page?
and then we can talk about the setbacks and different
Yeah.
scales. So,
Who is Sarah?
Sarah Mills again. I'm
She's
sorry.
with U of M.
yeah, so she was a part of the team that wrote the, it's on the Catalyst Communities website.
Planning and zoning for solar energy
Yes.
systems.
Which is a kind of a guide that is out there.
She's in the
for
renewable energy, department.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
empowering communities, so
Alright.
she's really focused on, she's developed kind of an expertise in zoning and the issues around solar, zoning ordinances. Yeah,
Wow.
okay,
So the first comment is on page 4, under Schedule A, which if you recall, Schedule A is for nameplate facilities, meaning the large scale facilities that would be regulated potentially by the state. And so Sarah indicated that we say that they're nameplate facilities and that they are permitted by right now zoning districts and require site plan review. That's what the new law is gonna tell us to do. So that's in
So
number
we're on page 4.
four, number 1, it's got up at Schedule A.
which is actually page 5 if you're going, oh, it's 4, you've
It's-
got the, if you're online, it's page 5.
Yeah, it says 4 at the bottom of that. And then at the bottom of page 4, BI, Planning Commission requirements. She indicated that it really should just be modified to say with any more stringent requirements adopted by the Michigan Public Service Commission as provided in the law. So that's what we did there.
So do we need to define, I'm sorry, Andrea.
Go ahead, excuse me.
So nameplate, in our definitions, we've got nameplate capacity, but we don't have a nameplate facility defined, do we? Because we're inserting a term of art that we haven't defined. So a nameplate is defined, whether there's a statutory from the MCLs that we adopt.
Well,
Or-
I was using the same definitions that were in the previous templates that we'd received. So I will double check and make sure whether they have a nameplate facility definition that they're using in the law.
Because,
Or maybe, you know,
so we might want to define it on page 1, 7, under maybe 7.5 or what becomes 8 or whatever, but
There might be others too.
There might be.
Yeah.
So she recommended, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is why people should get called.
Sorry. Sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Walsh?
Aye.
Aye.
The other Bob.
Yeah, the other Bob.
Are we going to do this page by page or are we going to just do it in Any order or what?
I would think that, if we're going over something that you have questions about or notes on, or prior to.
I would like to go page by
Yeah.
page. That kind of helps me a little bit digest stuff.
Are we good with page 4, what we just discussed?
I think my question about the nameplate facility, in addition to the, is if that law ever changes, do we have to instantly change our zoning ordinance, or can we say based on?
I think, well, I don't know. I don't even know if they have a definition, so I gotta see what their definition is. The nameplate facility should be, that's how, what I understand them to be, is a 50 megawatt solar, a 50 megawatt battery storage, or a 100 megawatt wind. So that's what I understand them to be.
Is there a person inside that can handle that? Is that?
We don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because it can be different parcels.
But
They can
there's-
put different parcels together and do it, but we don't have that much
Right.
contiguous open.
With transmission lines between them, is that a requirement too?
No,
Not necessarily.
It's not a requirement in the law.
So they just have to hook each individual parcel up and they can call it all part of a whole?
Mhm.
It doesn't quite seem right. I would have thought that it would have to.
It's not under current, they don't have to be under current ownership. They have to, they lease, usually a bunch of properties together.
Yeah, so the ownership doesn't change, therefore they don't wanna create one parcel out of all those, because the ownership.
No, that wasn't it. It was just if it's one project, to not have to be all wired together, you know what I'm saying?
It is all wired together.
Well, that was my question.
Yeah.
I didn't-
Yeah, they do wire them all together.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that?
Okay. The next comment is on page 6. And it's under wind energy, but it's the same comment that she had under, Sarah had under the solar about the planning commission requirements, noting that it has to be, compliant with the Michigan Public Services Commission. And then,
Get rid of our language?
yep,
No, she's suggesting it.
she's suggesting that we just say more stringent requirements that are adopted by the Michigan Public Service Commission, because in this particular case, the Schedule A is meant to coincide with the state law. And so we can't have more stringent requirements if we decide we want to do the CREO, the compatible renewable energy ordinance, that the state wants us to have. So we don't have to do that, but we're drafting this Schedule A so that we are compatible with those. And then we're gonna discuss it with the attorney and see if that's the way we should go. So that's what Sarah indicated. On page 7, B, it's the same thing, but for the energy storage facilities, referencing the more stringent requirements adopted by the Michigan Public Service Commission. And then at the bottom of page 7, when we're talking about Schedule A site plans, she wanted to add a couple of things. If the proposed site of the energy facility is undeveloped land, a description of feasible alternative development locations, including but not limited to vacant industrial property in brownfields, and an explanation of why they were not chosen would be part of that.
I like that.
And then also, IV, a stormwater assessment and a plan to minimize, mitigate, and repair any drainage impacts at the expense of the developer. The applicant shall make reasonable efforts to consult with the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commission before submitting the application and shall include evidence of those efforts in its application.
Is there a reason why we're only going to require them to make reasonable effort, not just to do it?
Because this is, again, this, what the state says. We have to mirror what the state says if we intend to do the CREO. When we do Schedule B regulations that aren't nameplate or that are just large scale, so a developer could decide that they don't want to go through the state's process and come to us. That's when we can provide more stringent requirements. or different requirements from the state law. But in this particular case, Schedule A is just mirroring what the state is going to require as part of their,
So the state says,
That's
they have
what
to
the
make
state said.
reasonable effort, they
Yep.
have to show that they tried.
yep.
Okay.
The next one is that a fire response plan and emergency response plan be provided. And then that a decommissioning plan consistent with agreements reached between the applicant and other landowners of participating properties that ensures the return of all participating properties to a useful condition similar to that which existed before construction, including removal of above surface facilities and infrastructure that have no ongoing purpose. The decommissioning plan shall include, but is not limited to, financial assurance in the form of a bond, a parent company guarantee, or an irrevocable letter of credit, but excludes cash. The amount of the financial assurance shall not be less than the estimated cost of decommissioning the energy facility after deducting salvage value as calculated by a third party with expertise in decommissioning hired by the applicant. However, the financial assurance may be posted in increments as follows. A, at least 25% by the start of full commercial operation. B, at least 50% by the start of the 5th year of commercial operation. And C, 100% by the start of the 10th year of commercial operation. Again, that's all stuff in the state law.
Okay.
So we don't have any real,
And what are the numbers based on? 25% of what?
of the
Cost.
salvageable cost, the cost to remove it. Minus the salvageable, value.
Somewhere, as I was reading, there were comments about the timing of that as well. Does that need to be aired? Is it?
Well, I mean, the state's allowing them for do it incrementally. In other projects, a township or a municipality would not necessarily do that. They might require all of that upfront, the full cost. It may be reduced over time. They review it every 3 to 5 years because the cost will depreciate and become different and less. And so they might release some of that and change it as time goes on. So
Is this because they're worried that these big things are gonna come in, they're gonna monetize it, capitalize it, take all the money and run and then leave us with just like a bankrupt company with all this infrastructure to contend with? Is that
well, I mean, yeah, I think
protecting here?
I think part of it is, yeah, if something happens and they go away, we don't have to deal with, trying to figure out how to scrap the solar panels or to, it's not just what's on the surface either. I mean, they have infrastructure, they have foundation posts, they have wires running underground. And so if you anticipate farming after a solar goes away, it's not just what's on the surface.
So they're gonna, it's a bond or a parent company guarantee.
Yep.
Good luck with the parent company guarantee.
Or revocable.
Irrevocable letter of credit from a bank, presumably.
Yep.
Excluding cash. So we need, when they come in and they wanna do this, they're gonna have to come up with this financial assurance in order to do it.
Yep.
So they don't just generate a lot of electricity, then leave it and go
Mhm.
and then we have to enforce this.
Yep. Well, this is what the state wants. Again, this
So
is what's
we
in the
have to
state.
enforce it.
We would have to enforce, we would have to enforce
they
it
came
if they
from
came
us.
through, us.
And through, if they're getting site plan approval from us, then would have that.
We would have that anyway.
So that we do that through through Carlisle Wortman and through our attorney?
And OHM, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Not our enforcement officer.
I mean, what I do like having some of this in here because it does give rather than totally relying on the state requirements, it provides us with some. I don't know, just the key points of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and our
The
logo, so we don't have to go running around. Picking it up.
Is everybody good with that part?
Later on, there is some discussion about the drain tiles.
Yep.
And,
That's for projects that aren't going through the state, yes.
okay, but is that included in the description of it being returned to a useful condition similar to that which existed before construction? Is that included in that? I would think it would be.
That depends on how the state interprets that.
So the state is, we don't get to interpret that?
No.
Is that what you just said?
Yes.
The state told us what words to put in here, so we
well,
do,
well,
and then we tell them what to
it-
do.
You know, this is still so fluid and that
Mhm.
until it's tested, I can't tell you how far the state will allow us to go as far as drain tile, if it's part of a state, if the state is going to be reviewing the project.
So part of it is, you know, and this gets back to partially the enforcement question. If somebody does go belly up and it's approved by the state, but yet they came through site plan approval, there might be two entities that could go after them in that case. And then it could be either
There's still a lot of questions how that's really gonna work. There just really are. And you know, so I'm dealing with similar ordinances in a number of my communities that I work for. And, you know, Carlisle Wortman, we have 75 communities throughout Southeast Michigan. They all have the same questions. Should we have a Creo? And, you know, just in my dealings, I deal with several different township attorneys, and I haven't had one that said to me, yeah, it's a great idea. So I don't really know where this conversation's gonna go.
You haven't had one attorney tell you it's a good idea to
They have a Creo.
Because they don't wanna have to enforce it?
No, because why would we? Why would we have a Creo if if the state has their own regulations? Why would we just say, okay, we'll do what the state says? We could have our own regulations and the developer could decide whether he wants to go through the state process or through our process. So, you know, we at Carlisle Wortman, we're working with a separate land use attorney for a white paper on some of this too. So there's a lot more information that's coming, and I'm not saying these questions aren't good they're great questions. There just aren't a lot of answers yet as to how this would all work. And, you know, I liken it to like the marijuana. You know, we as a state approved it. The state came up with the rules and the regulations, and then, you know, every local government had to kind of figure out how they were gonna regulate it, if they were gonna regulate it, and it's kind of the same type of thing, right? We're all kind of in the same limbo, wondering what's gonna stick. So,
And I think there's still, I haven't been able to attend any of those, but they're talking about solar ready communities and communities, you know, trying to, you know, provide funds for solar and so forth. But I think part of it is we don't necessarily have, you know, the capacity to do large ones.
well, and that's part of the question we're working with the attorney on. So there might be funds, if you have a Creo, you might be eligible for funds. And every community is gonna have to determine whether that's worthwhile, or if they would rather just work on their own separate ordinance and hope that maybe a developer would prefer just to work with the local government and get it approved.
So by the time we get through with this, we may choose to have the Creo as part of it or not.
Or not.
But we could take that out and still
Yes.
continue with the
That's
other part.
yes, we were just continuing to move forward, and, you know, Mariah's gonna give us some advice too, and we'll go from there.
Do you have an idea of when that white paper is gonna come out?
I hope by the end of September. We're still
Oh.
working on it, so there'll be a little bit of time.
With decommissioning of these, we've talked about if they go belly up. Assume it's a successful company and they just reach the end of a two slice. Who approves the final decommissioning? Is it the state or is it the local?
Good question. Well, the decommissioning plan should
Right.
come with this
But
project.
when they're done and they say, all right, we've done everything, who goes in and says, yep, they have done?
It's a good question. If it's approved by both the state, and probably us, if it's approved by us. But if it's not approved by us and it's just approved by the state, it would be up to the state.
And that's why it's kind of, yeah, right there tells you that it might be beneficial to have our own, just, yeah, so there is that second, because
Otherwise, they
The
can just,
state may not be as,
picky.
Is there anything here that incentivizes or otherwise promotes dual usage?
Nothing that promotes it. We allow it. All right, that was all the Schedule A stuff. Is everybody good with those things? On the bottom of page 8, we get into starting with our regulation of Schedule B, and that's meant to be nameplate facilities, but it could be any commercial facility, right? If they chose to go through our ordinance instead of through the state. So we added in A1, we missed it, that principal use solar energy systems and energy storage facilities on 5 acres of land or less are permitted uses in the RC, A1, and ER zoning districts. Principal use solar energy systems and energy storage facilities on greater than 5 acres in any zoning district are a conditional use. So we just added the energy storage in both of those. Sarah had some comments on the setbacks. She changed number 3 at the bottom of page 8 and the top of page 9 to say setback requirements for all yards may be increased or decreased by the planning commission based upon impacts to existing land uses and or zoning of adjacent properties. I don't know that we can increase or decrease our setbacks. No, I don't think so. I think it would have to be through the zoning board of appeals. So I don't really agree with either of those.
Yeah, I would talk
Statements.
with Jim and Ryan.
So we'll talk about that further.
I had questions on the setbacks. It's now a good time.
Well, let me say something first. So Jan went out to Miss Hindle's property and then we did a map. So currently dwelling units would have to be 300 feet from the solar project in all directions. And on Miss Hindle's property, it's, how big is your property, Miss Hindle? Is it 15?
Like, and then 15 acres.
15 acres, okay.
I mean, the one parcel.
Right. And basically, if she had to meet the 300-foot dwelling setbacks, there would be no area available. So, Jan and I spoke today, and I think it's still important to have a 300-foot or larger than 100-foot setback if you're talking about a large-scale solar project. Greater than 5 megawatts, let's say,
Setback from what?
from a dwelling unit,
From the dwelling unit or from the property line?
from the dwelling unit.
From the property line or from the dwelling unit or from 100 feet from the property line. So there's two different
Whichever's
dimensions
greater.
in there. Yeah.
These setbacks all refer to fencing rather than the actual units.
No.
It is-
Oh, to the fencing of the project.
So they're
Whenever
gonna
the
be,
project starts.
they're gonna be, are they gonna be panels or is it gonna be a substation or everything? Like what are we trying to separate from the property line or what physical object?
Well, in some cases, ordinances say from the fence line, because the majority of the facilities I've dealt with are required to be fenced because
Okay.
of their size. I don't know if that's another question that maybe we need to talk about. So it would be from the fence, which is the perimeter of the project per se, where it would start to the dwelling unit.
Is it for safety or aesthetic reasons?
Aesthetic and safety, both,
No, but like,
both.
because if it's somebody wants it on their own property, then.
Well, like, no, this is for non-participating properties. So this is not your house on your
So from,
property,
from adjacent property,
from adjacent.
from
You have all
adjacent.
kinds of setbacks, like you can't
No,
put your well 300 feet from the neighbor's well.
And I'm just thinking, there are different issues. I mean, I could see like a utility energy storage facility has a fire hazard. But solar panels don't.
Yeah,
And, you know, a transformer has some, but not as much as a battery facility. And then I'm just trying to think of, and I'm trying to describe it in a way that, how do you promote or look forward to community solar, which would be, you know, someone who might even have 40 acres and, you know, want to.
I understand what community solar is. Not many people do.
So, yeah, and, you know, I just found there was a guideline from the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association that did a good job with a couple case studies and so forth. I will add that to the packet that just came out, and it has some case studies in it. And so community solar is where, okay, let's say I have 40 acres and, and it's not legal yet in Michigan, but you could work with a solar developer, or you could finance it on your own or whatever. And you develop the solar, and then you can export it, and people can buy shares in that, so let's say,
For
let's say.
example, on my
Yeah.
property, if I put it up and in the neighborhood, it's heavily wooded. So a lot of the parcels aren't conducive for solar, like on your street, for example, Jan, along that road. There's not much, area for solar panels. So then I would provide energy and you guys could buy in and share in this, and it would go through DTE still. And they would, disperse the energy still, but you would purchase the solar from, this parcel. And it's supposedly going to be coming in the state of Michigan, like they want this to be passed eventually. And it also would help, for lower income places, et cetera, so that they could then share the energy, not necessarily have people buy in, but just share it.
So, and because right now, you're kind of constrained by having to only develop, unless you get approval from DTE, 110% of whatever is used on your site. But
That's the limit.
that's limited.
And if your property's conducive for it.
Mhm, mhm. Right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You guys keep banting about 300, a
300.
setback of 300
Feet.
feet. I don't see that on here.
Oh, in the chart on
Page 9?
9.
Mhm.
And I gotta say, the chart needs some headers that
Yeah.
are better.
Oh, I
Yes,
see.
so Laura, you had mentioned that you had given some thought to this about.
So, yeah, so maybe, 5 megawatts is approximately. Well, 10 megawatts is about 40 to 60 acres, so 5 megawatts is probably half of that, right? 20 to 30 acres of land. So maybe, we would add a 5 megawatt or less column for setbacks. And, that could be 100 feet, could be 50 feet from the property line, whatever this body deems is appropriate. Then for those projects that are more than 5 megawatts, so then you're talking about larger pieces of property or combined larger pieces. Then maybe we can talk about additional setbacks for those.
And the 5 megawatt is what is in the current legislation as a definition of community solar. 5 megawatt.
Could you also, tell them like the DTE on, the Domino's Farm one is it even 1 megawatt? I don't even think it's 1 megawatt, and that serves 300 homes. Just to kind of give you all an idea of what's, what it's capable of.
And both the design guideline that Sarah put together, we'll repost those both, and I'll add the Great Lakes Renewable Guidelines, because it does that. Great Lakes has some really good case studies in it that are helpful of where they've done some community solar projects actually in Michigan.
The other thing to think about is whether you want setbacks that are different from participating properties that participate in, whether it's a community solar and they're adjacent, or non-participating properties that might be, for community solar or for a larger scale. If their property is adjacent to this larger, they of course are gonna want larger setbacks. So maybe that's something we think about as we dial down this table.
How would you protect future owners? The current owner might participate, these one sold, the next one might not.
I don't know that you can. I mean, they were participating so when you're looking at large commercial solar,
Right.
you're either participating or
Yeah,
you're not.
I'm thinking more.
So-
community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
I guess the other question too is, and this gets back to what the planning commission can grant versus the ZBA, because I could see, properties are very, very different. And you know, the ZBA, when it reviews it, there needs to be a, you know, almost like a hardship kind of, I mean, it's very strict. And could there be something in the ordinance that provides, you know, more
Flexibility.
discretion and flexibility based on,
Well, that's what we just said, you know, we just kind of said,
yeah,
the plan commission could,
Increase or decrease.
increase or decrease.
increase, or, and I don't know, I mean, we don't do that for any other type
Yeah.
of development, unless it's a plan unit development and they ask for a deviation,
Yeah.
right? So,
So maybe this is a, I mean, could it be?
I don't know, I mean, that's something I'd have to go back and ask, you know, it's not something.
Maybe it's through a deviation, could request a deviation from the planning commission. And then, I mean, maybe.
Do we want that?
They all will request a deviation.
Do we want that?
Responsibility.
Do we want to open that door?
I guess it depends on how, I mean, there's so many things that can impact it, like what's the view from the adjacent property? You know, what's the topography? I mean, is the setback from the street, you know, is it the back side of the solar panels or the front side of the
Wouldn't-
solar panels?
Couldn't all of that be decided by the zoning board of appeals? I mean, those are
Like
the
what?
types of things that, like the topography and, you know, tree removal, those are reasons why they reduce setbacks and, you know, modify.
It's
the
more strict
layout.
than that. It's like you can't do it. Well, you just make it smaller. You know, I just, you know, when you go to the ZBA, you're trying to say, I can't do it any other way. I can't, you know, there are, you know, there are other like, I have to cut down more trees or something like that. But it's not just, well, you know, you can't see it well. That doesn't tend to be a factor. I mean, if
But
there's a
you-
septic field or, you know, an obstruction.
You start getting into, is it something in the district? You can start to see the flexibility if you look at the broad scope of what we have to consider
Mhm.
and recognizing that from a ZBA perspective, this hasn't come in yet.
No, and it won't, because we don't have.
Well, but again,
ordinance,
yeah. it
But I'm
will
just trying to think,
be-
is there something in the ordinance that we can do that allows a little bit more discretion for
Well,
the ZBA?
you mentioned the backside
Mhm,
versus front side. If it's in the backside, you could have screening.
mhm.
So if you have screening, you can have this setback. Something.
But that could also be written in the ordinance.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
You
that's-
Put that in there.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't, no one would obstruct
The
the
south
sun.
or the south,
Right.
southwest, southeast side, whichever.
Actually, you could screen it, but it has to be far enough away and limit your height. So I mean, if there's screening, maybe we can allow smaller setback and leave it up to the designer, you know, the architect to determine what they actually could put in. How they could screen.
You know, it's very expensive.
So I do like the idea of doing a 5 megawatt and less, even though it, you know, goes to the megawatts as opposed to the land area.
Well, I mean, that's how communities, I don't like
It's
doing the
defined.
megawatts either, because technology is gonna change and the megawatts are gonna change. So you're gonna start with a 5 megawatt project, and over the course of many years, it's gonna become a 15 megawatt project, right? So
Same area.
in the same area, yes. And so that's why I don't really like to do it this way. But I don't, you know, you also can't use a full 40 acre piece of land, right? Cause you have setbacks and you have other,
But can we use, 5 megawatts is 20 to 30, can we use assumed acreage now and split so that the acreage is the defining factor, not the megawatts?
So do the conversion
I
calculation.
don't know. I mean, if community solar is 5 megawatts, up to 5 megawatts, I don't know, I feel, maybe, let's think about it, but I don't know.
Because what we're really talking about is land, we're not talking what's on it, because
Let-
what's on
And
it
that's up
can
to,
change.
that's up to you. I mean, if you're comfortable saying 20 acres or less, or, you know, that's up to you.
5 megawatts on my parcel would fill it completely, and I don't mean the yellow section. It
No, I
would
know.
fill that entire parcel.
With the panels,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
at
massive.
15.
It will take about
5
20 to
megawatts is a
30.
lot.
5 megawatts will take 20 to 30 acres.
It's just
It's
you
a-
have a vision of it. And it would cost
But that's 5 megawatts.
$7 to $8 million
Yeah.
to put it in the panels.
But that's just the maximum, so.
Yeah, I'm just letting you all know.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
The scale.
So you can kind of visualize, kind of understand it.
Do we know how many panels that would be?
I don't.
It varies, Kim, because different types of panels have can generate.
I'm just saying a roundabout.
But approximately 500 at least, if not more.
Depends on if it's movable, you know, if it.
Right, you can generate more if it's.
If they can tilt it, and,
That has expense.
yep.
Like this one.
And I mean, we could also, there might be an arrangement where it's, where we take the equivalent, because I think in, the Sarah Mills publication, it equates 5 megawatts or something
It's
around that with
20
20 to 30 acres, so we could say, you know,
then we
at the
could revise
maximum
that chart.
of 30, you could take the 30 acres as kind of that definition. And we could make our own definition of a community solar installation of 30 acres or less,
So this is
something
what
like
Bob
that.
was
No,
doing.
actually.
Yeah. And I think we're getting to acreage more than anything else in the end.
Or maybe it's 40 acres because there are a lot of 40-acre parcels that,
We need to think about this
You know.
more.
Yeah, I think.
I know, and I also kind of need to see some
yeah, we can
size.
do that.
Get a map nearby solar and they're, you know, like,
And the size of them.
yeah, like how big is like, how much does
Let's see
the
if-
township hall one generate?
Oh, it's not township party, it's.
The fire station, that's only,
That's what I meant.
Yeah,
it's,
that's small compared to this.
it's under,
What about
it's
the,
not even I mean, it's way under a megawatt.
right,
It's
yeah.
it's in kilowatts. I could look it up.
the solar panels on Dan Hoey? Near that, behind that, right on Dan Hoey, across the street from where the affordable housing complex was.
Is there a map of like
Over by the school.
Washington County solar?
Yeah,
place?
right across from that,
Right, yeah,
that affordable housing.
yeah.
Would that be helpful? What?
You haven't seen that? Okay.
That would be,
Is it DTE's property on, near High Point? It's
High Point has,
not High Point, but I was meaning on the.
Oh.
Is that DTE or?
no, that's ITC.
ITC.
ITC. God only knows what ITC is.
But for instance, I know that 500. I'd have to look at, but they're like I think one of the two larger ones that are close to Scio Township, but one is Rubin, that's at the Unitarian Church.
Oh.
High Point has another one that's like it's 125 kilowatts, but none of them are, are even get to a megawatt.
The houses around me, I can come up with 24 acres. That's a huge chunk of land. I mean, just visualizing.
All treeless already?
No.
Right.
My neighbors are constrained because too many trees. They can't do solar.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to look at that we definitely need something that's less than.
Yep.
Okay.
Are the community solar projects, do those have to use the existing lines?
What do you mean?
The grid?
The grid.
Yeah.
DTE grid.
They have to tie, I mean, all of these have to tie into the grid somewhere. And usually they're looking for a transmission line or a substation where they can generate and then distribute it. Which is why I think initially we talked about where are the transmission lines in the township, and because that's where ultimately the power has to get to.
Unless you do something like Ann Arbor's doing where it's a supplemental energy utility, which would then be a microgrid kind of, that would distribute the power
I haven't been
within
part of it.
a geographic.
Yeah, I haven't been part of it. So.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll work on that now, see if I can't get some answers to some of those questions. On page 9, under IV lot coverage, both Paul and Sarah noted that lot coverage can be counterproductive, and they both felt this should be removed. I've done ordinances both ways, where they don't have, there's communities that say, well, the panels, we really don't feel are lot coverage, the rain goes underneath them, it's pervious.
So, yeah, what's the rationale behind this policy?
So that it limits how many panels you can cover. It's a limitation.
Again, aesthetics versus electrical production?
I think people just want to limit it somewhat.
But we'd really be limiting it with the setbacks in a way.
Yes, I don't particularly love the lot coverage.
I think
Regulation.
setbacks. And then trees, I mean, the amount of the trees that they have to remove, the vegetation in order to clear it up. We cover that kind of thing.
That brings up a question I think our tree ordinance should certainly apply. The
Yes.
question is, can the tree ordinance apply to the state?
No,
That's the thing, we don't have a lot of large parcels.
no, I don't think it could. I mean, it definitely would if we were reviewing it. And, in my experience with large projects, they don't take down a lot of trees anyway. They don't touch wetlands. They want flat
Farmland.
farmland. They don't want to have to grade. They don't want to have to take trees out. They don't want to deal with wetlands. They have to cross drains a lot of times if they're so large, depending on where it's located, but they don't really want to do a whole lot of land balancing and tree removal and all that stuff, from what I've experienced
Yet.
yet. That's probably true.
So you're saying we're proposing taking out IV?
I believe, yes. Yep. Moving on to page 10, under screening. Paul had a comment about screening and talking about what should go there, but in this provision, we already referenced section 36-345, which is our greenbelt ordinance. So we've said what we wanted, what types of planting we would want in the greenbelt. And we already all allow for the planning commission to waive landscape requirements as part of our landscape ordinance. So I think that's covered elsewhere. He just wouldn't have known that. We already have that kind of provision. Any questions on that? Okay, and then page 11, under fencing. Sarah noted that we should ensure our fencing standards are compatible with I believe it's the National Electric Code, which requires a 6-foot fence with 3 strands of barbed wire, a 7-foot fence around these types of facilities. In other ordinances that I've done, we have gone away from barbed wire and chain link fence. We've asked for agriculture fencing, where it's like wooden posts with the wire mesh. It's more attractive than chain link with barbed wire, and it does allow for deer to at least hop the fence. But a lot of these larger, I'm sorry.
Why would you want the deer to hop the fence?
So they can go in and out. It wouldn't be contained to one.
They're gonna go in and graze.
They're gonna go in and graze.
And I think there's something, because when you put up a fence, you eliminate that area from a
Yeah,
lot
that's
of
the
wildlife.
purpose of the fence, to get it.
Yeah, but here, the purpose of the fence is safety. And I'm wondering in a smaller solar, do
I
you
don't-
need fencing?
That
Would be the NEC.
Yeah,
Okay.
What are you saying?
I don't know that you can have a solar facility, even if it's small scale, without fencing, because it's based on the National Electric Code is gonna determine whether or not they need to
Safe.
provide safe security for the facility.
Let's find, I'm sure it's a size. I bet you it's a, the
Well,
the
the
power
individual
generation
person
size.
doesn't have to.
Doesn't have to have fencing, so we
No,
need to
they
figure
do not.
out what
But
size
they have
that
the same
is.
type of equipment, so safety would be safety, right?
Well, I don't know the National Electric Code, so I don't.
Let's say you had, if it's a, like a, maybe 10 megawatts, or maybe 5 megawatts or whatever, it's probably at a certain power level because the danger increases, with the size of the transformer and et cetera, from
Does it?
electrical standpoint. I don't know.
Yes, but it also depends on where you're collecting and transmitting. Because the individual panels, you're probably all right. Right, it's the building or wherever where it's getting consolidated, then passed into the grid. That's where the danger is.
That's where the fencing. is
That's where the
needed,
fencing should be,
But
because
not around
And not around the
panels
panels
necessarily.
So I'm just thinking while you guys are saying, so you don't think that there could be theft of panels? Or theft of panels or?
different topic.
Security
Security.
is in here elsewhere.
Well, I'm thinking a fence would be some security for
Yeah.
kids playing in the area.
I think.
And there are such things as wildlife fencing too, that, allows the majority of wildlife to come through without. Yeah.
But you have-
I'm
Like
just
the
thinking-
turkeys
Yeah,
sitting
like
on my
turkeys,
6-foot
exactly.
fence.
Well, I'm just thinking, you
They just fly right over.
Pooping
30
in
acres
the
of
yard
land.
that my dogs eat, that's the whole purpose of having a fence.
Yeah, and more the building, but
Yeah.
the security overall of the site. As a kid, how many 6-foot high chain link fencing, you get a barbed wire was to stop it, when we found ways around that.
They're just ugly and,
What?
and it's just ugly.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's that, I mean, the aesthetics are bad. but
Yeah.
The question is what's the fencing for? Is it
And what is
safety,
being
is it
fenced?
security?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can find somebody who knows the,
The electric, yes.
that's, I'm gonna note that, which.
Security purposes as the planning commission deems necessary. Start to worry about that. That word. It either is required in some cases, and we lay out those cases, or
Well, see, the NEC can also change.
Yeah.
That's why,
yeah,
And I think we're setting out a minimum based on local standards, whether it's NEC or anything else. Should the proposed developer of the site have something additional they want for security or whatever, that's part of the site plan approval.
Yeah.
And they certainly can do that if they.
They can, I believe we don't allow barbed wire unless it's an agricultural use in our ordinance. So we wouldn't even
That's
allow the 3
right.
strands of barbed wire. Unless it was.
unless it's
Only if it's a.
required by the NEC. Okay, so we have to look at that.
Yep.
And I don't think we'd want that if it's not required for.
No.
Lesser, smaller facilities.
Yeah, we can. On page 12, it starts on page 11, the drainage and stormwater, but on the top of page 12, Sarah wanted to add to, drain tiles, if non-functioning drain tiles are discovered during the survey, they must be repaired and made functional, and she added, or moved, abandoned, if the drainage pattern has been altered to function in another manner approved by the Washtenaw County Water Resources Commission. Any questions on that? The next item noise, Paul commented, it would have to be consistent with the state act and the sound should be measured from the dwelling wall, not the property line. But this in fact is under our Schedule B, and so we would not have to use the state standard, so. What we have here is fine. Down further the page, under wind energy conversion system, we added to setbacks, the nearest non-participant party property line. And then at the very end, no setback is required between participating properties. So if the wind, you know, they can cite them contiguously, however they're spaced on those properties.
Kind of go up to about regarding code compliance where the yellow is.
Yeah,
All renewable storage energy facilities, et cetera, subject to the building code. So we don't enforce the building code at Scio. They enforce it next door.
yep.
Are they agreeable, amenable,
Well, the building-
trained, qualified?
The building code addresses, you know, the International Building Code, which they've adopted,
I
that
know.
we've said that they adhere to. They would have to follow whatever the building code is for these particular things. So
So yeah, they would enforce.
they would enforce the building code as it relates to the electric, you know.
The county.
Because if we have a code that requires a certain kind of pipe and the building code doesn't, they don't enforce that.
Nope. That's why we're just referencing the building code.
So that's what I'm saying. They're on board with this, even though they're supposed to be on board with this.
Well, we haven't talked to them about it
Okay.
yet.
Because sometimes conflict in code and whose responsibility and what they're there to do
No, understood.
arise.
Understood.
Yeah, so in zoning compliance, kind of like Workman would be reviewing when they submitted.
Yep, so we review the site plan here, and then they're required to do their zoning compliance. Which it gets approved here before they can pull any building permits. And during that zoning compliance review, we're ensuring that whatever comes through is the same project, you know, outcome that was approved by the planning commission, the zoning board of appeals, et cetera, before it goes to the building.
Board of Trustees.
Well, I mean, after the board of trustees, even after they approve it, before they can get their building permits, yes. Okay, wind energy. We talked about the setbacks. In addition to the first comment we made about no setback required between participating properties, Sarah noted that, the statement should be considered by the township attorney. It's the setbacks for all yards may be increased or decreased. That's the same, I don't know, this is in here. This is the template we've been using. I agree. I don't think that we can do that, but we'll, talk to Mariah about it. Any questions on
I
it?
have a question. If we can waive landscape requirements, why wouldn't, if the ordinance stated that we could do that for these specific facilities?
It's a question for Mariah.
Because there is that.
Because
precedent.
someone's gonna come and say, well, why can't you do it for my use? You do it for solar.
Because the
Oh, wait.
ordinance says we can't.
I know, but that's,
Yeah,
you know,
okay.
that's what's gonna happen. Page 13. Height, Paul wanted us to get rid of or 175 feet, whichever is less, because he indicated that no, 175 feet is not even a height of a wind turbine at this point. It must be much higher. Oh, that was removed. Sound, again, Paul commented to be consistent with the state act, but again, this is not on the Schedule A, so Schedule B. And then on page 14, we deleted the fencing around the perimeter. That was kind of a carryover from the solar and the battery storage. Typically, wind doesn't have fencing, so it just got added. It can be removed. And so now we're into Schedule B standards for all renewable energy facilities. These are the additional items that we would require as part of their site plan. And that includes, information regarding abandonment, removal, repowering or maintenance, decommissioning. Sarah commented on decommissioning on page 15. It's not clear if decommissioning is based on salvage value or full cost. So we'll talk to, I'm gonna talk to Mariah about this. And, I'll look to others, ordinances to see what they've done, as they're drafting these.
So in this section of decommissioning, who decides what its original condition is and that it's been restored?
They're gonna show that on the, so they are required to provide a decommissioning plan. And so you're gonna, as part of the site plan, you're gonna see what the existing condition is. You're gonna have the grades of the current property. And as part of the decommissioning plan, you can look at that and say, they're saying they're going to do that. And when it's time to decommission, we can pull that plan out and make sure that it was done properly.
Would that take into account drain tiles?
Should.
Would that take into account soil compaction?
Well, we talk about drain tiles later,
I know.
but soil compaction, I don't know.
So they're gonna put roads in order to access it for service. And then when they take the roads out, it's gonna be packed hard. And if they don't do anything, you can't farm it easily. Whoever farms it would have to kill it. They'd have to break it up again rather than have it returned to its
But how
original
do you do
condition.
that?
You take borings and you find out
But then how do you remediate that?
same way the farmer would. You
Yeah.
break the soil up, but they'd be required to do it instead of,
But that also has some, you can't farm compact soil, but but by tilling, you also do damage to the.
But if it's a road, it's
Soil.
already been. But I would assume that can be part of the site plan and the approval process of any roads not deemed desirable by the owner of the property shall be returned to a pasture or whatever like. That can be part of the approval, I assume.
Well, it would be, it would have to be shown in the decommissioning
Right.
plan, what they intend to do with those areas of the site, and then how they would.
I can just see it coming up for discussion though, and we bring up this, that, and the other thing during the review, and we have to think of it. I mean, every time, if it's not listed. So do we want to get into that?
And then we just
We-
decide, we end up deciding case by case and
Yeah.
being consistent.
Yeah. So that, the phrase restored to original condition, every time I see that, I just. Finding it.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, how much of the size of the project too.
Yeah,
And the more requirements you make, the more cost it is, and the smaller the project is, the less impact it has, but at the same time, you require the same thing that you have on a large project, then pretty soon, community solar doesn't make economic sense because of the regulations. that
well,
you put into
community solar
place,
might be
too.
small enough that they wouldn't need to have an access road, for instance. They might just, drive their four-wheeler in with the equipment that it takes to maintain it.
I
That would be it.
I don't know, the fire department might have a different
Depends on where they.
perspective on that. I mean, depending on how far back it is and how, I don't know how
Yeah.
they fight a fire.
So we should probably
So I
talk to them
think-
about it.
I
too.
Yeah,
I think it depends on it has a lot of things that it depends on. It depends on the size of the parcel and the size of the project and where it's located and the shape and the alter.
Southern exposure and everything else. We're not gonna be able to cover all of that.
No. And, frankly, a lot of these projects are, as Laura said, even small ones are millions of dollars. They can be millions of dollars. My personal perspective, I don't know that we're ever gonna decommission any of these. I think technology will change, the panels will change, it will age. It'll just
retrofit.
continue to, I don't personally feel like it'll go back to farmland anytime, not in the next 50, 100 years. So I don't know. Once you get the infrastructure in, it's gonna cost an awful lot to take it back out.
I guess I would say,
I don't know, we're involved in the Whitetail project,
I reviewed the Whitetail project.
so, I mean, they say they're going to decommission it, but
They say, oh, yeah, I mean, they have a decommissioning plan and the whole thing,
So-
yes, that's required.
you can probably say to them what their plan is, and you can talk about that, but there's just no way with that investment, it's $150 million.
I don't think that project will ever, it will always be a solar farm.
Yeah.
It will 100%, in my opinion, always be
Correct.
solar.
I mean, it would make sense.
They'll change the panels, technology will change, things will change. It might get smaller, you know, as technology changes, you know, the panels or even the size of the project
Or they-
potentially,
Or
but,
they keep it the same and
and they have more,
They have
yeah.
more, generate more powers.
But I do not think that it will ever go back to being.
okay, on a smaller scale with community, the only thing I can see, particularly for this area, is property value for housing gets so value that you would take it down after a certain period of time and develop it, but not farm it.
So that's
That's.
redevelopment.
Right. I mean, let's be honest, things around here are just gonna get more expensive.
Also solar on the roof or something.
It'll be required by that time.
Solar.
All right, I think we only have like one comment left. Page 16, Paul just asked for provision IV to be modified, to say the applicant must submit manufacturer safety data sheets for solar panels, transformers, inverters, batteries, and any project fluids, instead of all proposed equipment, because he said it might be thousands of pages if we asked for that, so. And then, under V, fire response, Sarah wanted added, energy storage facilities shall also comply with NFPA 88. Which we'll make sure with the fire, I don't know what that means, so I'll talk to the fire marshal about that.
Fire Prevention Act?
Probably.
NFPA, although I think we've adopted, there are two fire codes. And we haven't adopted NFPA, we've adopted
IFC?
OC.
So I'll make sure it says the right one.
I hope IFC covers the storage facilities.
Well, we'll find out. Yeah, so I have a little bit more work to do. Do anybody have any other questions or
On
comments?
page 19, under natural feature preservation study, there's a acronym DBA, it should be DBH.
No, this is.
It's just- and
I see it.
DBA just flowed nicely too.
Well, I just got done telling Kim earlier, I read things, I type them, and I read what I think it should say and not what it says. I appreciate
What
it.
page are you looking?
19, under natural feature preservation study, it's just, tree size.
What should it say instead of DBA?
DBH.
DBA should be DBH.
I have a question for probably you, maybe you, and the women in the audience who know a lot about this. Are there some examples, in Washington County or locally, where we can drive to see the size and scope of the panels and how much energy it generates? So we can get a sense of that. Like, have you driven around and seen, I know there's stuff at ITC, I know there's stuff at.
Map online that you can look at, and you can pull up each site, including the proposed site of Whitetail. And you can see how much energy's, produced, et cetera. And then you'll be able to get a really good idea.
Yeah, I think
Do you
it
know what that map it?
could be part of a packet.
I'll pull it out. I'll send you the link.
Okay, great, and we'll put
It
it
is
in the,
a great map. It's
And you-
very, and the sad thing is it shows you how there's nothing on this side of Ann Arbor at all. Other than the baloney that's down at ITC. I mean, that's so small. It's nothing. I mean, it's 0.5 or if even, yeah, it's teeny. And they've got all that land. They could,
it's a token.
yeah, it's a total token. It's a joke. But, yeah, you can pull that up and start looking
That's
and,
right.
you know, and it's interactive and you'll get a good idea, I think.
Thank you.
I don't think there's a storage unit of the DTE one on Domino's Farms, which is, you know, right there at the top of M14. Pretty sure that's just panels and then they just put it straight to, you know, they've got some sort of
Yeah, and
connection.
I will ask Veridian, where they are,
Find out what's it called?
because I think
Under,
they were in,
Wind.
they were working with DTE to maybe put some
Going.
utility grade storage at that site, but I don't know if that's going forward or not, but I will ask them, because I haven't seen any, I mean, storage is a whole different.
On the other site either,
That comes up here.
and it's heavily covered by wildflowers, I mean, you could drive past that and never notice those solar panels. In my opinion, but.
That must be it.
Okay. 60 kilowatts, 0.06 megawatt. With 4, okay.
See some power lines.
Yeah. If you go
So
solar energy
that's
map.
what some farm.
Okay, all right.
Comes up.
Yeah, we should probably,
Yeah. Oh,
put
no,
a,
that's
put a
like.
link to that in our packet next time we do our. so we
I
can-
will, and I'll send it with the GRLEA guidelines, because they have a bunch of, I think ones in Lance and a couple of other communities, so.
And I drive by it, but I never really stopped to take a look at.
Are there any plans developed now that we could look at for
Swear that.
the landfill solar? Are the, is that still,
I took an Ann Arbor.
yeah, in Pittsfield? The joint,
There's plans, but I don't know.
oh, that's right, you're Pittsfield.
There's plans. They're approved.
No, we could also look at that.
I don't think they've requested permits for construction. Yeah.
New business?
New business.
None.
Moving along. Okay. Reports.
I have, I emailed mine, I have some printed copies if you need to see it. Okay,
Yeah.
I got Kim.
Yeah, did Carlisle?
I did get it,
anything
thank you,
else
I'm good.
that
No, I got yours
you
too,
wanted?
thank you.
I don't have anything for the next meeting, but we do have 2 conditional uses for the second meeting in September. We also received, Towns of Honey Creek site plan just resubmitted. We got like 6 plans last week, so we went from nothing to.
Okay, so probably no meeting, the first meeting in September, we probably won't have any business.
I don't think so.
We don't, I mean, there's any reason to adopt, to do the minutes here. That'll give us a little bit more time to get the solar stuff together.
Yep, so you'll have 2 public hearings and then solar stuff at a minimum at that meeting.
So you're saying that in September, we will not have a meeting on September 9th?
Correct.
Okay. I'm gonna cancel.
And, oh, are you, and then I just wanted to ask that when you do a report to the Board of Trustees, if we could just get it included in our next packet.
I've sent it to you, but I will
Yeah.
start putting them in the packet.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Why is there such a hard time reading that report?
Well.
You send it to the chief and not the rest of
Not
us?
the rest of us.
Kim, I have one question about your report.
Sure.
About the rep from the Michigan Municipal League, and Economic Development Legislative Committee in Lansing about short-term rentals may be allowed, kind of like a by right, statewide or
Yeah,
without local oversight, local zoning?
without local denial. Yeah, this is a committee of state folks looking at legislative ideas, and that's what that's about.
And do they talk about whether it's principal residents, non-principal residents?
You know, it didn't come up.
Okay, all right.
I think I don't know.
Because there's yeah.
The bigger question, is that an issue in Scio Township? Are short-term rentals an issue where people, you know, I don't.
I know there are
Haven't heard
quite
much
a
about
few
it
in-
here. I know other communities around us have had issues like Airbnb stuff, partying, noisy.
Yes.
We have had complaints.
We have,
We have.
In Scio? Like in like more dense residential neighborhoods, or like rural where they come in?
No, in existing neighborhoods. And I mean, there's not a lot, but they're few and far between, but we have had.
Okay.
complaints.
Do we have an ordinance one way or the other on it?
We do not.
Okay.
And that would be
All right.
would that be a zoning ordinance or a general ordinance?
Well, a lot of communities have a rental ordinance, which is a general ordinance. And so, for example, in Pittsfield, because they have a rental program and they have a rental, you have to register your rental. They treat short-term rentals and long-term rentals the same. They don't distinguish between. So if you register your rental, you can do long-term or short-term. Here in Scio, we don't have anything like that. And so we,
And that's something to think about, John, too, because as we increase the amount of rental housing, once they get constructed, there's no further inspections.
No.
And that's become an issue over time.
I've always wondered about it.
And at least have, fire marshal inspections, you can do the fire inspections of those rental units.
Smoke
which we
detector,
can do now.
carbon monoxide, egress, though, I get.
And have we ever adopted the housing, what is it called? It's the.
IMPC or International Property, International
it-
Property.
Pardon, maintenance,
IPMC,
it's a maintenance,
Yeah.
yeah.
The International Property Maintenance Code.
Mhm, mhm. I don't think we have we? Because now that we're getting more rentals, that might be something that trustees might wanna take a look at.
Well, homeowners associations and kind of developments, can they still override?
they can have in their bylaws that they don't allow rentals. A lot of them don't
The
want you to rent.
Let alone
Your
short term.
Yep. And so that would be up to the HOA to.
That's
Of
likely,
course.
that's likely where the complaints go,
Mhm.
to their HOAs.
Yep.
Yeah, but the housing ordinance might be something to consider as we start having, because it's not so much with new rentals, it's just as they age,
Yeah, right, I was gonna say, it's
maintenance.
not Woodview Commons, it's stuff that's been here 25 years, now the stoves, the furnaces, yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Continuing on, ZBA,
There was a meeting on August 15th. I could not attend for the same reason. I missed the August 12th. I was on vacation. So they relief for a setback, it was approved. And it's a lockout line.
yeah,
The Watershed Council would love people to attend their Sons on the River. That's going to be September 12th. Their big fundraiser, so it's not really any information for us, but it's, it's upcoming. Fun.
a reminder, are we able to get the study they did at Myers parking lot?
Have we got the study?
Will we
No.
get it or be able to share with Myers?
I had suggested that we get that as part of their, display for our.
Uh-huh.
our-
I would like to give Myers a heads up with. it,
Okay, so
so.
let me find out. Fast. Right.
Cause I think they would also be interested. Yeah. Okay.
Get a copy of it? Oh.
Okay,
Jan,
yeah. Yeah, same thing. for-
Yes.
Yeah. All right, thank you. I think I did wanna ask, and this is sort of part of the report, we did the Jackson Road Advisory Group had, and thank you for the people who joined online and came. And I wanted to ask if the planning commission, right now, the current proposal was for 3 meetings. There were some additional costs for additional meetings. And sort of a discussion where we think we are with that. And in my mind, the question is, we're gonna now, we did get our grant for the transportation study. And whether or not we wanted to get, feedback for that transportation study, and Laura too, your thoughts on that, and that might give, another layer of information.
Well, maybe, I don't know, would you intend to use that same JRAD group as part of, to talk about some of that your transit study
It's not-
information? I think that's beneficial, right? Because you have DDA members there, planning commission members there.
And we would probably, and the SEMCOG grant also includes like the road commission, city of Ann Arbor, Duxford, and it's
But as a subgroup of those,
it would still.
it would
include
still,
those
I mean,
kids,
you
those
could
kids.
talk about at least the Jackson Road DDA component, part of that.
Because it seems like we've kind of rehashed some of the same things and having another layer of
I mean, new
information.
people come on board, and we're having to get folks up to speed to even think about it and discuss it and stuff. We're kind of not getting anywhere.
Well, I know Doug still intends to, I mean, he's, the last couple of meetings, he wants to have a vote. He wants to get you to vote on some things, right? And so he has some, clarification as to priorities, right? And so, I think the group still needs to meet at least one more time to narrow down and vote so that he can provide the final priorities.
I don't think the group is prepared to vote. I'm prepared to vote, but I don't think the group as a whole is prepared. Some folks have just come on for the first time.
Well, it'd be the core group.
It'd be the
that's
core
been there, wouldn't be,
I don't get a vote.
right? It'd
Oh.
be just that core group.
It'd just be the group that's been meeting.
We were there to see what you guys did.
Last week.
Yeah.
We don't get to vote.
Can I ask a question about that? Depending on what you're voting on, ultimately it gets kicked to this group.
Yeah, it's just meant to,
It's
to
to focus
determine
our
priorities. Yes.
Make recommendations to
Right.
them.
Yes.
Okay.
The planning commission,
Right.
which was the charge.
Yeah, I know,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. Just to see if a consensus has been reached.
No,
And if it
right.
hasn't, the report will demonstrate a consensus was not reached. And that just means we have more work to do, right?
Totally fine.
But with your question, Jan, I mean, I think it would be great. It would lend some structure, it would lend some ideas. Unfortunately, that's why I was saying to Jay Holland for the second meeting in a row. Go look at Ferndale, and what they did with Woodward. Woodward is bigger than Jackson Road and has far more, I would imagine, far more traffic. And they put in crosswalks and they put in bike lanes and they, parking, et cetera, so, but
Also to Laura's point, I mean, we could kind of end that piece, and it's not like those folks will not be involved in the.
I'm sure, I mean, I guess I had it wrong, I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
no, I'm.
I mean, I think
looking for
I think they have to be
discussion.
tied together,
Mhm.
right?
But but planning commission isn't probably gonna do anything with it until we finish that road. But we could finish that group work and then toss back to the planning commission to include the recommendations and so forth.
I would just say that I would recommend that Doug be pointed and where he's directing the vote. In other words, we need some A, B, C, D.
Yeah, I think he had like 6 different
List of.
options.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanna, horizon issues, what do we have coming down the pike likely? That's coming to us? you know, what projects there will be coming here for public hearings or for deliberation?
So the next two public hearings are for conditional uses. One is for a new cell tower at the Maxi property, brand new. The other one is an indoor basketball facility, which is really cool. Off of, I think it's 3L's Drive. It's in one of the industrial, off of Industrial Private Road. Towns at Honey Creek, the site plan was submitted for review, so that probably will not come in September. We probably,
That's
that's the
east of-
Menards,
east
that's
of
the
Menards.
Menards outlet, yes.
Townsend.
Honey Creek.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't bring my list, so I have to rack my brain.
So we're gonna get, but all of that is in the.
Is
report
in,
that you
is in
sent
the,
to
is
her.
in the, is in the funnel coming down, yes.
We're gonna get that.
You're gonna get it.
All right, stay tuned, Rising.
There's been a couple admin site plans that are not a big deal. They don't come to you.
What's the latest on, Urban Crossroads?
Crossroads, so as you
Or do
recall,
they not call it Urban Crossroads, it's just called Crossroads?
it's Crossroads by the Urban Group.
Okay.
It's the developer. But, you recommended final PUD approval back.
Right, it's at
in
in front of the BOT now.
And the BOT should be hearing that, I think the second meeting in September.
Okay.
Because it's a PUD, the board has to hold a public hearing, so it would have gone this next meeting, but we had to. Do the
Notice,
for the-
okay.
Well, I'm curious to see how they straighten out that conflict between what the board required, and what he thought the board was requiring with regard to the asphalt.
Oh, yes,
Operation.
yeah,
The air
they
testing.
are, yes, we've been very involved getting.
Has that been kind of ironed
Yes.
out?
To my knowledge, yes.
Okay,
It'll be up to the board
all right,
to determine.
all right,
Up to you, John.
all right, yeah,
We've done all we can.
okay. And that's TBD. I'm gonna take that as a TBD. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't know, do people have a chance to read the Board of Trustees report at all? Or any?
Call, I emailed it, call if there's any questions as usual. It's just kind of a recap.
Anything on land preservation?
Just that they're doing some due diligence on getting some conservation easements, so there's trying to get something out. Hopefully in the fall, so we're getting into the environmental assessments and they have to do the appraisals, so hopefully there's something, couple things coming down the pike. And conservation easements.
And ESTF, I think we're set for, everything's been approved for Meyer location, so we can start publicizing that. And
Right,
what's that for the sustainability fair?
is that October 5th?
6th, Sunday.
10/6, okay.
Yep, from 11 to 3.
Okay.
And we'll start getting
October
some 6th, Sunday,
6th.
October 6th.
How, what, 10 to 3?
It'll be 11 to 3. Yeah, setup is at 10.
Sustainability, and are they gonna have, all the demonstrations and all that stuff? I mean, that was fantastic with all the devices you could.
Yeah, yeah, so
hands-on.
the idea is to, do the hands-on stuff, and I think we'll have a actual bicycle repair workshop too, so.
And
Cool.
the electric car.
As far as I know, I have to do the final coordination with Bruce, who is their group, so that'll be fun. I think they're gonna go from 10 to 2. I said, I'm not that early, so, okay. And thanks for the Western Washtenaw report. And-
Get some highlights on that?
Yeah, do you wanna,
Okay.
questions for Kim? All right, then, Kim, you're on for September for the pre-app rotation. Sounds like there might be a few.
Yeah, well, we have one coming up tomorrow, I
Tomorrow.
believe.
2:00.
Bob already went to one last week, I think. I did,
Mhm.
and you'll be there again tomorrow, right?
Yep.
So, yeah,
Okay, good. So
At 2.
yes.
any other announcements or we'll go to our.
I would just say one thing about,
Your
his report.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like the statewide housing plan is a freaking mess. Marred down by lots of process, et cetera. We're in Region K. Livingston, Monroe, Hillsdale, Washington County, Jackson. And so they've created all these regions across the state, and then everybody's left to figure out what they want to do. Our Region K is trying to put together a website so people within the region can look and see what's going on, what's being discussed. And the other thing is they've changed the initial process so that now you have to file an application for funding and anybody can do it, not just townships or cities or whatever. It could be Avalon Housing or.
Now, is this Mishta or is this?
Yeah, Michigan. But my sense is that it's a mess and, because because money is being handed out right now as we speak. And doesn't sound like a whole lot of money is being handed out in Region K. Like, how do we get the money? Scio. And so I just don't know about that process. But anyway, and one other,
What you mean by a mess is that we're not figuring out how to participate.
well, the state has set up this. I mean, it's a lot of people, and so everybody to try to deal with, so I get it. But it just feels like it's marred down by process. And not a lot is happening to further getting the funding to projects to make it happen. Or how can it get to Scio Township, for instance? How can we access that money to be used for housing? And so.
Cause isn't it development based? So you have to have a project that gets approved and funded. It isn't just funding to do housing. You have.
Yeah,
it's a
I think
specific
that's
project
true. Yeah,
Proposal,
yeah,
and so, yeah,
So the
and we
other-
don't have a housing commission that
right.
would.
But if we knew there was a pot that we could apply for, we get the application, I'm sure you can get it online. And we'd figure out, like, we could have applied for dollars to help with the affordable piece in constructing this quality theater. We can get creative about it, but you gotta know how to access it. You gotta know, so. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is that, Chelsea, there's a lot of discussion about how, the Washington County Commission closed their planning. The county closed their planning department years ago. And so there's an effort by the Chelsea City generated a letter, and I had talked to folks at the commission about how would this be a good method to communicate, to jar people to start talking about it. And that because the idea is that there's housing needs across Western Washington, which is what we deal with. But there's no central plan, nobody facilitating discussion about it. And so they sent a letter to the Washington County Commission saying that let's see. Saying that they would like the county to take a lead on some of this. And Jane Pacquiao, who is the mayor of Chelsea, asked if other townships and cities wanted to co-sign this letter. So that would be something that would need to go back to the board of trustees. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because I want, for consideration.
So Dexter has a planning person on staff. Does Chelsea not?
Chelsea has a planning department,
Okay,
but it's bigger. That's what they can do for Chelsea.
or regional,
Yeah,
like Western Regional Planning.
correct.
Got it.
So do you have a copy of the letter that you?
I can get a copy of the letter.
Yeah.
I don't have a copy. And the rest is kind of straightforward. You guys can read it. Any questions on this?
Right, anyone else? And we'll open up for public comment. Anyone here would like to address the planning commission? And thank you guys for coming. Anyone online?
Yes, Rob Pattinson.
Hi, Rob.
Rob Pattinson, Scio Township. Laura, thank you very much for the report in tomorrow night's Board of Trustees agenda packet of your planner's report. Those are extremely helpful in knowing what's coming down the pike. To assist you on your list that you didn't have tonight, Abra's Grove is still simmering away, and Knights of Columbus is still simmering away.
Yep.
One interesting note, Heritage Woods, there has been nothing happening out there. They cut down a bunch of trees and it stopped there. So I think they're having trouble raising money for Heritage Woods.
Actually, they have a pre-con scheduled in the next week or so. So
Ah, interesting.
there you go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Was that in your report? I don't.
No, I just learned that today.
Perfect. Jan, I think those reports, the OHM report is also in tomorrow night's Board of Trustees meeting. I think that would be good if they got in your planning commission packets as well. And well done tonight, gang. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No.
Okay.
Move to close public time.
Okay.
Support.
Support. Aye. Okay, further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye, any opposed? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, so it was Moore and Hyde.
8:37.
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at
8:37.
8:37.
Thanks.